The limits of civil disobedience. Now let us see that which were the group, those who remain apart from the participants. Who were they? All the social groups did not join the civil disobedience movement led by Mahatma Gandhi, especially untouchables. Now the question is why they didn't participate in the movement started by Gandhiji. The group of untouchables, those who called themselves Dalit or oppressed class, since 1930 they stayed away from the civil disobedience movement. For a long time, the Congress ignored the Dalits because they had the fear that the group of conservative Hindus, but Gandhiji firmly supported them and gave them the title Harijan, that means children of God. Gandhiji did a lot of efforts to remove the caste barriers. He organized satyagraha so the group of people may get access to the public places, wells, temples, toilets, etc. Gandhiji tried to secure the entry of untouchables into the temples, or they can get the water from the public wells. They can move on the roads as well as they can enter in the schools. To set an example, Gandhiji himself cleaned toilets to dignify the work of the sweeper class. He persuaded upper class to change their mindset. To make themselves powerful, the untouchable class started organizing themselves. They demanded reserved seats in the educational institutions, as well as a separate electorate that would choose the Dalit member for the Legislative Council, as they believed that the political power can solve out their problems which they were facing from past many years as the social disabilities. The Dalit participation in the civil disobedience movement was limited, particularly in the regions of Maharashtra and Nagpur, where their organization was quite strong. Although Gandhiji wanted everybody's support so that the civil disobedience movement could be a nationwide movement in which all groups of the society were participating. In this series, there were some clashes happened between the group or the people. One of such incident was held between Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and Mahatma Gandhiji. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar organized the Depressed Classes Association for Dalits in 1930. On demanding separate electorates for Dalits, there was a clash between Dr. Ambedkar and Gandhiji at second round table conference. Gandhiji wanted to make the entire country unite without any barrier. The British government was agreed on the Ambedkar's demand for the separate electorate for the untouchables. But Gandhiji believed that separate electorate would affect the unity and integrity of country. To oppose it, he fasted unto death. Finally, in September 1932, through Pune Pact, the depressed classes got reserved seats in provincial and central legislative council voted by general electorate. It means from each electoral unit, the candidate who stood for election could be the untouchable, but the people, those who cast vote for them, they all belong to different communities. Even all the people can participate to vote. The next group was of the Muslims, those who remain aloof from the civil disobedience movement. The civil disobedience movement was not even joined by the Muslims on broad level way, as the Muslims felt separated from the Congress after the call of the non-cooperation Khilafat movement. From mid 1920s, the Congress was dominated by Hindu nationalists. It resulted the worst relationship between the Hindus and the Muslims that led to the communal clashes and ultimately riots in various cities. In 1927, both the Congress and the Muslim League tried to pit up the gap between them. The differences between them were due to representation in the assembly election. The prominent leader of the Muslim League, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, decided to give up demand for separate electorates. Jinnah agreed to give up demand for separate electorates for Muslim if they got assured reserved seats in the Central Legislative Assembly and representation in Muslim dominated provinces like in Bengal and Punjab. This presentation should be in the ratio of their population as he demanded. But their demand did not resolve at in 1928 at all parties conference. This matter was not discussed. M.R. Jayakar of the Hindu Mahasabha strongly opposed it. Feeling alienated in the Congress, Muslims decided not to join the civil disobedience movement. Many of them were worried about the Muslims' status as minorities in India, as Hindus were in majority and were dominating. At last, we can conclude that when civil disobedience movement started, there was no trust among the social groups. The people were not sure about their value, thus, they feel alienated and remained separated from the civil disobedience movement.